We've had our first two pitchers reach 200 strikeouts this season, but Zach Wheeler won't be able to be one of them because he's going to be injured and out for the season. Rob Manfred talked this week about realignment in baseball. We're going to talk about that. We might be looking at a 156-game season. And our stat of the week is good old-fashioned batting average. It's been injury day here on Saturday. We're recording a day early here.
Part of it is because, guys, the Wheeler thing has sort of been known. It's like the question was, how bad is it going to be? And it's as bad as it could possibly be.
Thoracic outlet. That's the one. And I can't think of too many pitchers that have ever come back from that and been anywhere near what they were.
I mean, if you have to think that's an injury that really renders the National League wide open. The Dodgers have not been so overwhelmingly good over the past.
They're as on Saturday. They're in a flat-footed tie with San Diego and playing each other this weekend.
Right. So if you're the Brewers, if you're the Cubs, if you're anybody in the National League, you got to be thinking, if we make the playoffs, we got a chance, because nobody at the top, what looked like an unassailable top of the National League a couple months ago with the Dodgers, the Phillies, and the Mets is now very.
Well, now it's the Brewers, right?
Now it's the Brewers and the Cubs.
Right. Well, the Brewers and I, we can get into this as well, but I still wouldn't bet against the Dodgers, by the way.
No, they can still come out of this. 100%.
I don't think the Dodgers, and it was said this week, I don't think the Dodgers, whether they win the division or not, they're going to be in the playoffs, and they're like, don't really care how we get there. Let's just play when it counts for something. So yeah, recording this on Saturday because I am going to the U.S. Open tomorrow down right next to Citi Field.
Though they won't be playing there because they're in Atlanta. Right,
it's interesting because that happens Monday. The Mets come home and play the Phillies Monday night, and I never wanted to be like, those were bad days when you had the Met game and the U.S. Open, because
it gets crazy.
Parking is nuts to begin with. But anyway, I'm going to go on Sunday. The first time they play them. This will be year number 51 or since I started going on the first day. And
I went with you a few times.
Yeah. So it's a tradition, and I'm really looking forward to it. But let's take a look. Skubal and Crochet get to 200 strikeouts. Crochet did that here today on Saturday.
Had a great start as the Red Sox pummel the Yankees
again. For the 8th straight time, the Red Sox have beaten the Yankees. So who's your daddy now is kind of the thing going on there. And the Tigers just kind of are playing good baseball and quietly have a pretty much an unassailable lead in the AL Central.
The AL, none of the other teams in the AL Central ever put together a period of play here in the second half where they could make a run at them, and the Tigers didn't keep going into free fall, which nobody really thought they would.
So the Royals, who people pretty much put for dead a couple weeks ago, all of a sudden won a bunch of games in a row, and they lost last night. And Vinny Pasquantino has had a great streak of 5 straight games with a home run, which is pretty remarkable.
Which for them, they desperately need any.
I think the major league record is 8, actually. So, and Don Mattingly is one of those guys who has that record. And we had a lot of, if you watch the Little League Classic, which was the Mets game against the Mariners last Sunday night, Commissioner Manfred got into the TV booth with the guys there and started talking about, as he was asked by Carl Ravitch and the other guys, where we're headed with expansion and things of that nature. And I don't think anybody is surprised at all that we're looking at expansion by a couple of teams, probably Nashville and Charlotte,
so you can't be surprised by the idea that Major League Baseball is going for it. I think we've even kind of talked about
absolutely.
It
but the realignments, and we talked a little about this last week, kind of interesting because what it's sort of boiling down to, it looks like to me, is going to have 8 14 divisions. Right, so you're going to have, in each league. Well, let's say we keep the American League and the National League. Then you'll have these, and you'll play those teams a lot. You'll play them 12 times. So that's, and then you're going to play the other teams in your league 6 times. And you play the American League, the other league, the American League, the other league 3 times for every team. So, so I don't know how that's going to impact. Like the Mets and the Yankees always do a home and home. It sounds like that would go by the wayside. If
that's the kind of thing that I could also see them being like, everybody plays the 3, but we'll find like the Mets and the Yankees will pay more than that. The Cubs and the White Sox will play more than that because people in those towns want to watch.
I tend to think you're right, but it's the reason that it goes to 156 games is that's the way the math works.
Right, but you could just chop out a game against one of the other teams series in the National League. I don't think no fans are going to be crying because the Mets didn't play some series against the Pittsburgh Pirates.
5 games instead of 6 or something like
right,
that.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah, we got one less game against the Pirates, and instead we got a Mets-Yankee series. I think every fan in baseball is more in favor.
And what I thought about when I saw the 156 is a couple things. Like, number one, it became 162 games because of expansion in 1962. When you add
that is why it's kind of hard for me to believe that they're going to add more teams and take away games.
Well, it's just because of the way that it works out. And if you're going to have more playoffs, you can afford to give up 6 games. You're going to make more, in that extra week of those kinds of things. So, and the records now let's go for records, right? So 162 games. Remember when Maris broke Babe Ruth's record, he had a little asterisk put in there by Ford Frick, who was a Ruth guy, so, he had 162, even though he didn't hit it. I think he hit it, in the last game, he hit number 61. And the records for all-time home runs would be more difficult if you played 6 fewer regular season games.
All the records would be more difficult.
Well, certainly the cumulative records, RBIs, and things
pretty
of
much
that
all the
nature.
counting stats.
Right. Although the RBI record was set in 1930 when it was still 154
that's what
games.
we look at when we're talking about single-season performances, are cumulative
Right.
stats. Nobody's really going, he's got the most impressive K per 9 for a season yet.
I mean, Barry Bonds had 73 home runs, and you're going to try to do that in 156 games. That record could stand for a very, 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 very long time. It's already
going to stand for a really, really long time.
Too.
No, they have 162 games right now, and nobody's hit 60 in years.
Right. Well, 62 by Aaron Judge just a couple of years ago.
Right,
actually,
but he wasn't even. He needed 11 more.
Yeah,
and it took him everything to get to that 62. So I don't see Barry Bonds is even with 6 less games. I don't think it's going to make a difference. I don't know if anybody was ever catching that.
So I also saw this week, and Manfred did not talk about this in the booth much, maybe a little bit, about how MLB has sort of spread the rights around for the ball games, and ESPN is going to carry all the out-of-market games digitally for people to subscribe to. And you're still going to, you'll be able to pick that up through ESPN if you have a cable subscription to be able to do that. But interestingly enough, Apple dropped out of that, and you're going to have sort of wildcat cards like the Netflix will. It looks like they're going to take the home run derby.
That's meaningless.
I think so too. They paid $35 million for that, which I don't know how much money they sell in advertising with that, but that's a lot of money.
I guess because it's like as far as a casual baseball event, that's the most casual one there is, and the most likely thing for people that aren't baseball fans to tune into.
But I'm glad that I guess ESPN took a big share in getting a bunch of games, because this was going to be weird if they were not going to be part of baseball anymore. I mean, it's going to be hard enough now. You're going to have to look. You look all over the place now. You're still going to have to look all over the place because you got Peacock games.
It's still going to be annoying.
Yeah, it is annoying, and MLB just, I don't know why they can't get this right. I know it's not easy. I understand that.
There's a reason. It's because this way makes them more money.
Well, and you're right. And with all the games, right? So it's not like the NFL where you got 17 games. You got to figure it out. You got 162 right now games, that you have to sort of spread around. It makes it more difficult to have one network handle it.
It also just creates more opportunities for friction. There's a lot more chances as a fan of a baseball team that at some point you're going to be home on a random night during the week, Monday through Sunday, want to watch your team, go to the normal channel they're on, and they're not there. And then you just start having to play the game of, okay, where actually are they? And hope you're not one of those people that's like, oops, you're in a blackout area. You just don't get a watch tonight.
And one of my pet peeves is, if you're going from streaming to might be cable or whatnot,
it doesn't work well.
It's very difficult to watch. You can't flip back and forth as if you're changing a channel.
Right, which is something we're all used to when you're watching it on broadcast.
Really bugs me, by the way.
Right, because you're like, oh, okay, I guess which is great for the streaming platforms when you feel like, oh, great,
you're trapped in there.
I'm stuck here watching the commercial.
Yes, I feel that too. So I want to mention about the Yankees again. A couple of things about the Yankees, and not just because of their recent struggles. The Mets have struggled every bit as much as they have over the past couple of months. But the Yankees hit 9 home runs earlier this week. They could have used some of those today for the second time this season, and that is the first time a team has ever hit 9 home runs in a game 2 times. I think that says they got a lot of home run hitters and
not much else.
And not much else. I think
I'm sure they would trade any one of those home runs for maybe making a few less errors.
You think about that? Well, and that's the thing about the Yankees, that you're watching their defense is down there among the worst in Major League Baseball, and I don't think that is a playoff. We look how they sort of fell apart in the World Series last year. defense was part of that, and I still think it's a problem, and I don't know that they can fix that problem.
Well, you're going to fix
Not this year.
You're going to fix it this offseason when Anthony Volpe is no longer your shortstop.
You could sit the guy right now and just say, we can't afford to have you out there.
You got to sit the guy just to protect him, because this is what you're starting to kind of feel bad for the kid. Like, it's like you're just watching a team that, I hate saying this about a ball player, but you're watching a team put somebody that looks out of their depth out there on the field,
or at least right now.
Did you see the throw he made today?
Yeah.
Wait, it's constant. It's every game and it didn't help that Jazz didn't really try to get over to second base to make that play. But even if he had made a good throw, the guy would have beaten it by a step. So not only did he make a late throw, he made a terrible throw. And Aaron Boone just goes, yeah, I believe in the kid. And it's just like, oh, are you sure you should be? Like, maybe at a certain point you need to stop believing in the kid.
And now the Yankees trail the Red Sox in the AL East, and the Red Sox are kind of coming, although the Blue Jays still have a fairly comfortable lead of 5 games or something like that on the Red Sox. And it makes me wonder about the Yankees going, is this a team, do you think, that has a better chance to make the playoffs and do something than the Mets? If you had to pick, I'm going to put you on the spot. Yeah. How about make the playoffs?
Make the playoffs.
Which of the two teams, if you had to pick one?
They have a better chance of making the playoffs
than the Mets do.
Right. They have less competition in the American League.
I think the league is not as strong.
Right. You're only dealing with the other team out of the AL East and the other team out of the AL West for the wild card spot, because it really maybe the Royals, but it's not like you have all these other teams that are all kind of coming in there to compete for spots right now. That's going to make it tough. You're not competing for the third spot like the Mets are already.
And just the Yankees, and talk about doing something, because if I got to doing something, the Yankees pitching, Will Warren got hammered today, and he's, had a game season, I guess, in terms of going out there and doing some good things, but also some not great things. Just the whole pitching staff, like, who are you going to turn to?
I think that's
if you had to give the ball in game one.
That's baseball. Look across baseball. How many starting pitchers in Major League Baseball right now are you turning and looking to and going, yeah, I feel really good about giving you the ball today?
The Phillies, I would say, because I think
not anymore.
Well, I don't agree with you that Zach Wheeler is a death knell for the Phillies, because Christopher Sanchez, Ranger Suarez, Aaron Nola. Christopher Sanchez had a Cy Young like season, by the way.
None of them are Zach Wheeler.
Yeah, but it's not like they don't have anything behind them.
No, but none of those guys are like
Luzardo. They've got some really good pitchers.
The way I look at it. Would any of those guys be the first choice if Wheeler was available?
Wheeler would get it only out of just respect and his career. But if I had to say who's had the better year, I could argue that Christopher Sanchez at least was right there. Wheeler was in the Cy Young conversation. Right. So is Christopher Sanchez.
But you would still pick Wheeler before you pick Sanchez. So that's why I think it's a big loss for them, because it's not like they lost Sanchez and you still had Wheeler, where you go, okay, yeah, Sanchez is having a great year. It's a really impactful loss. But he's not the cornerstone of your rotation.
He is now.
Now he is. Probably, but it's like you just look across baseball. There's not a lot of starting pitchers that you could tap and be like, I feel confident that this guy's going to give me 6 innings in a playoff
Well, we've been
game.
saying it for a while, and I think Glasnow's pitching today for the Dodgers, but all the Dodger pitchers are kind of getting healthy right at the end of the season.
Yeah, but none of them have been particularly good.
Well, I would say that, they haven't been consistent. Is what it is.
Right. That's the thing. It's
mostly because they're injured all the time.
Right, but that's a big problem for and you're certainly not looking at Sasaki thinking, oh yeah, he's coming back.
No,
that's looking like a bad.
Doesn't it right now?
Right, he's not even in the majors.
Yeah, he's trying to find himself in AAA and is just barely getting up to 96. This is a guy who was throwing over 100 miles an hour regularly and is trying to get back to that.
And Yamamoto's been good, but he's not been.
His advanced stats have been better than you might think when you look at his body of work.
Right, his body of work, but it's like. I do think it's interesting that there was so much lauded on Senga, Yamamoto, and Sasaki coming over, and Senga had a great rookie year for the Mets, and Yamamoto was impressive last year. But none of those guys has been this transcendent revelation that we all kind of started thinking they were going to be.
It's hard to be a horse, and I watched Crochet pitch today for the rest. Man, that guy is good.
Right.
Tarik Skubal, that's a stud.
Those are really
these are workhorse guys that
was that kind of,
Yep.
and this was something that we've been talking about with the Phillies for a long time. Eventually,
I said they were old, and
eventually he was.
I'm so sorry that he's out, though. I really love that player, and I'm worried that you might not get to see him pitch anymore.
Right. And I do think that just to bounce away from them just to a team that I wanted to talk about, because we spent a lot of time talking about them this year, and they never figured it out. And that's the Texas Rangers.
Yeah.
You were so sure that they were just going to put it together. And they're a team that reminds me a lot of the Mets, where they are somehow less than the sum of their parts.
The pitching there has actually been better than you would have had a right to expect. So the hitting wasn't there?
When the hitting was there, the pitching wasn't. When the pitching was
hitting
there,
really hasn't been there all year.
Really hasn't been there, but that's kind of how it's been for the Mets, where it's just like the hitting has been there, but like they've just, like, for whatever reason, when you look at that team and the talent on the roster, they are not playing up to the total talent level on the roster, which is a far cry from a problem a lot of teams have, where you just look at them and you're like, okay, well, the problem for them is they have like this guy in right field who's not like a top line major league player. It's just like a guy. And
you look at the managers, Bruce Bochy, who's a veteran manager,
right,
a Hall of Fame manager actually for the Rangers, and Carlos Mendoza for the Mets. Like, wow, man, those teams are better. It must be the manager's fault. We should fire those guys. What's that going to do?
I don't think it's going to do anything. I think you could certainly point to questions about both of their managerial strategies. Bochy has a reputation for riding guys riding guys in the lineup long past the point of like, okay,
Mendoza pulls his starters too early.
Right, Mendoza pulls his starters too early. Bochy leaves. He's like, okay, the guy's been hitting 180 for like 4 months in a row. I think we can try somebody else.
Yeah, well, and particularly veteran managers have a penchant for holding on to veteran players and giving them the chance to work it out because they really trust them.
Right,
and it's like, no, he stinks. You take him out now.
And something that's really what I've kind of seen develop across baseball is like, you need about 2 weeks. If you've had 2 weeks and you're not producing, especially as a young player, you're not getting a lot more time. They're not going to let you spend, unless you're like some super touted prospect, they're not going to let you spend 2-3 months figuring it out at the major league level. There's another guy that they can come in to see if he'll immediately produce.
I mentioned the Blue Jays briefly being in first place, and I just wanted to note that Alejandro Kirk, the catcher, the burly catcher, that's not a nice way to put it, got his first career stolen base this past week after 2,000 plate appearances. So I thought, well,
is that the most?
Is that no? Somebody named Gus Triandos had one stolen base in 4,400 attempts. That's the fewest in history. And there are guys like Charlie O'Brien, again, mostly catchers. I
was going to say we're talking about the catchers and first baseman.
Right, exactly, guys. Wilmer Flores is not on this list because he actually has stolen more bases than that, even though he's the slowest player in Major League Baseball.
Right. The only person I've seen that might be slower than me.
And the AL East as well. One other thing that was of note, and I'm going to ask you about this. So they have a young catcher, Sam Basallo, who's 21 years old, and they brought him up last week, and then a week later they signed him to an 8-year, $67 million contract. He's 21 years old. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack with that, right? The one is giving a player who's been in the major leagues a week an 8-year deal.
Didn't see the Red Sox at least gave him like a month.
They gave Roman Anthony a couple of months. Well said. Very good. But just that you could do that, and that is them trying to hedge their bet.
I think what that says is, what the heck happened to Adley Rutschman?
That's what I took from it. Exactly. Like, wow. So where's Adley Rutschman going to play? He was their catcher.
He was their wonder kid.
Made him. He's been an all-star and all that stuff. But
now it's been like 2.5 full seasons because he fell apart in the second half when they had that collapse a couple of years ago, and now he's just been like bad
and not good defensively either.
Right.
Which is, okay, that was supposed to be like his strength.
Exactly. And with young guys, I think the chance of somebody like when you have a prolonged streak of bad play like that, I feel like at a certain point, it's like, okay, well, now the prolonged streak of bad play is longer than the streak of good play. Yes. That might be more real than the good play.
This is who he is.
Right. That's a question as a Met fan you're asking yourself about Mark Vientos. Okay, we had last year's streak of good play. You give him a full season of that. Now you've had a full season of, I don't like what I'm seeing too much.
And every time Vientos does something good for
is he back?
Okay, this is it. He's turning the corner. Yeah, no, it doesn't really last very long.
But that's the problem as an organization, as a fan. How do you evaluate?
And you're in love with the best of his play.
You've seen what the best of this guy can do. Oriole fans saw what the best of Rutschman could be. But how long do you hold on to that before you, or instead you call up, Sam Basalo and be like, okay, let's see what this kid can do, because he might.
And let's pay him so we don't have to pay him more if he really is good.
Right, because what we can't keep having is our catcher batting 230.
Yeah. Yeah, well, actually 230 would be okay.
Right.
So let's do our stat of the week, and it's a boring stat that has gotten a lot of sort of slap around over the past few years because batting average has been devalued, and I wrote about this as well. I'm going to release that this next week, I think. So I did some research on it. It's like why is batting average so like not important anymore? And it's mainly, in my view, it is important, but we understand that it's just part of the equation and not the be all end all that old guys like me used to read the paper and look at the batting averages on Sundays, and there's it was such an important part of stats before we had
the batting average
advantage.
leader was such a big deal. But
Yeah.
then I think over time, as the guy that led the league in batting average stopped necessarily being the best overall hitter in the league, and it just became a guy that had a good average. Like when I think of guys like when Juan Pierre started winning those batting titles, and then you looked at what Juan Pierre actually did offensively over the course of the season, you're like,
he's a better version of Luis Arias.
Right. He was fast. At least he was fast.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So he could steal bases.
Luis Arias is not fast.
Right, and that's the problem, I think, with batting average, is that all it's showing is the guy's ability to get a hit, which sounds stupid when you reduce it down to
Isn't
just
that the idea?
Right. But what are those hits? Because you could, if you have two guys, one guy's hitting 300 and one guy's hitting 285, there's a universe where the guy that's hitting 285 is like 3 times the player that the guy that hitting 300 is.
And the Rubicon could be crossed this year because as we start play here on Saturday, Freddie Freeman of the Dodgers leads the National League in batting average at 303. His two teammates, Will Smith and
Trey
Turner, are batting 300 exactly. Those are the only guys in the National League that are
we might have a
300.
batting champion.
There may not be a 300 hitter for the first time in Major League history.
And I think that's where we as fans struggle with it, just
In the
because 300 feels like a good average. Like it feels like
Shouldn't lead the league, right?
Right. It feels like that should be like what a solid good average is. And you're gonna have a really tough time as an older baseball fan, even somebody my age, is gonna really have a tough time adjusting to the idea that somebody that hits 250 in a season had a decent average that season.
And that's what it's kind of turning towards right at this point. Like, okay, well, he's hitting 250. Like 250, that guy was a
bum.
Not a star player by any stretch.
He would be a guy that you would be unhappy about in having your lineup.
But if you add the advanced stats to the 250 hitter, that may not show in a Luis. We'll talk about Luis Arias in a second, a little bit about. He's the poster child of what's wrong with that batting average.
He's the best modern example in baseball of why batting average isn't a statistic you can solely rely on.
Right, because he's won 3 straight batting titles, by the way, and in both leagues. So he came from the Twins, and he's won 2 in the National League.
For the Padres.
Right, so this, he's slow. He's no power. He makes contact with balls out of the strike zone 93% of the time. Which, okay, so you can foul them off. Is that him?
Does he still strike out a lot?
He does not strike out. Right, he never was a strikeout guy. That's his secret superpower.
Right. So the big thing with batting average, and I'm sure I bet something that somebody hasn't done is, what is the relationship between batting average and slugging? Where like how much higher, like on a scale, right? Because it's like at a certain point, it's like, okay, yeah, he might be hitting 260. Like Juan Soto's hitting like 260, but he's slugging almost 900. He has an OPS of almost 900. So it doesn't matter that he's hitting 260 because that's helping float him so much.
So I think we used to look at 300, 400, 500. Right, 300 average, 400 on base average, and a slugging percentage of 500 or more. If you do that, you are a star.
Right, and I think what we've seen now is you can modify that. You have tiers within that. Like, okay, I can drop the average to 250, but if the on base is still above 400, and now the slugging is 600. Okay, I'm on board with that. He's still getting on base at the same rate, except now he's not quite getting as many hits, but of those hits, there's way more extra base hits.
I mean, Aaron Judge is leading the American League in an average with a 330 average, still having a terrific year. Remember, we thought he was going to bat 400 at one point early in the season. So, and I think he'll certainly have enough at bats to qualify. You have to have 503
he would
plate
have to
appearances.
Basically not play September.
Right. He's been injured, so it cost him some obviously at bats. But yeah, I think there's has no problem in the American League. And Carl Yastrzemski has the Hall of Famer for the Boston Red Sox, has the lowest average to win a batting title in 1968, the year of the pitcher. He hit 301 to lead the American League. So he also won 3 batting titles. So this is a Hall of Fame guy winning batting titles, as opposed to Luis Arias. I don't think anybody is going to argue that Luis Arias is on his way to Cooperstown.
He better not be.
And so, and you're right about guys that win batting titles, right? Like, Michael Young. Remember when Michael Young won batting titles?
Right.
Nice ball player.
Right. But there's a difference between Michael Young winning a batting title and Miguel Cabrera winning that batting title when he won the Triple Crown. Those are 2 completely different seasons. And so you can look at, when you look at Luis Arias' baseball savant page, his expected batting average is in the top, roughly the top 25% of baseball. He's got one of the highest rates of squaring up on the ball, one of the lowest chase rates and whiff rates. Except, he's also in the lowest slugging percentage. He's in the 9th percentile with an expecting sluggage of 345, which means more often than not he doesn't get even doubles.
Right.
That's nightmarish.
Right. And so let's say you're looking at batting average and you're in a tight spot of the game, and you have coming up, you've got Luis Arias, who's batting 299 or 300, and he's a 300 hitter, let's say. And you've got Manny Machado, who's batting 260 or something like that. But he's got the power stats and the other guy. Who do you want to see in that clutch situation?
It really depends on the clutch situation. If it's purely, I just need a hit, that's where guys like Jeff McNeil and Luis Arias have value, because it's a guy that you feel like can give you a professional at bat and probably get a hit. But if I need something more than just the ability to get a single, I'm always going to pick Machado.
Yeah, I think that I feel the same way, and I think because you go deeper into the advanced stats and say, look, and this guy, this guy hits the ball, it's probably going far, right, and going, and he's going to make extra bases on it at a much higher rate than Arias is.
We've talked about total bases on this podcast before, and I think total base. I wonder if there's some kind of calculation you could do looking at batting average and total bases together and giving your average total bases per, looking at that basically.
Remember we had total bases per plate appearance?
Right, combining that with batting average might tell you what your average is in resulting in the number of bases. So you're getting a value of okay, this is what these hits are actually producing, because you might have a guy that's hitting 260, but if he's producing way more total bases than a guy that's hitting 300, that's going to be more valuable.
So I'm going to get old-timey on you a little bit here and think, okay, and then there's the through line, right? The batting titles do mean something, because we can go back to 1876 and talk about, the first guy Ross Barnes, who won the first National League batting title in the first year of the National League in 1876. And you have a through line all the way for the past 50 years, right, of batting titles. In the American League, you have 125.
The list of batting champions.
Right. And so that's why I don't want to see the leagues eliminated, because that history is what they should lean into, and say, okay, yeah, we all know it's not as important as it was. And maybe we'll see a time where Ops Plus is one of the stats you see, the first stats you see, instead of batting averages and all that kind of stuff. But that history embracing, to me, is so important to not give up the idea that batting average is important. It's not the only look. Slugging average includes, batting average.
Right, that's part of it.
It's part of it. So you're using batting average. So we're not saying it's not important. It's just not the only thing.
It's just you can't isolate it.
Right, and say, but a guy who wins the batting title in either league is a good hitter.
You can't win the batting. You can't win the batting title by mistake.
He may not be the best hitter in the league, to your point. He may not be the MVP, but he's a good hitter.